definitely taking this opportunity to turn it into.
Hello.
I think he's a. Oh,
Hello.
We're live.
Hello.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we are live.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. I guess I should introduce you real quick. So today we have Edmund McMillen, who is quite famous for bringing us Super Meat Boy, The Binding of Isaac, and The End is Nigh. He's also worked on a number of Flash games back in the early 90s. I remember you released them in like
early 2000s.
Early 2000s. Oh my god. Okay.
In the early 90s, I was like 10, 11.
Okay. So I just remember reading A Cry for Help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was well. The website came in. I think it was 99, 2000. That's
Okay.
when I put it in. But I started making the comics in 95. 95, 96.
Yeah. So we're very happy to have you here, and let's go ahead and get started with this interview.
Bring it on.
So I guess the first question is, how has the transition from Flash games to like making console games, how's that been?
It's been interesting. When you're doing a Flash game, it was more acceptable to have a really small, simplistic game, almost like a game jam game. Majority of the more notable games in my Flash lineup, like Triachnid and Time Fuck and the C Word and Ether and the original Meat Boy, were all done in a matter of weeks.
Yeah.
Super, super fast. It's like rapid prototyping. It's an easy program to use, especially when it comes to animation and art. So you can make stuff that looks pretty and with simplistic physics and some other stuff like that. And so it was easy and bite-sized. And then when you're trying to make money off of your games, you've got to actually show up with more of like a larger video game. And so with Meat Boy, it was like going from a few months of development with a pre-existing engine to, working with Tommy who made his own engine, which took a while. And then we're basically working on a large game for 2 years with a lot of pressure and no income coming in. So it's just like a super long-winded version where your future is uncertain and the money is going away.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no money in Flash games now, but there was for a tiny second in time back in like, I think 2007 to 2009, there was kind of like a little indie boom in the Flash scene where you could get sponsored because your games were getting millions and millions of views.
Yep.
So there was money in it. And I was lucky enough that's one of the main motivators why I was really prolific at that point in time. And then I used the money that I made like 30 grand over the course of a few years off of my Flash games. And then I used that money to make Meat Boy. I used it all basically over a course of 2 years.
I remember hearing that you almost sold Isaac to was it Adult Swim?
Yeah, that would have been a mistake. I seriously considered it. I mean, because I went from making a console game to, okay, I'm going to make a Flash game again. And I look around and there's no sponsorship money anymore. It's like the only offers are, we buy your game for a few $1,000s, and some people got like 10 grand for their games and stuff like that. So it was like, okay, well, I only worked on this for 3 months. So what's that worth to me? Is it worth it to just sell it to a company? Like, I don't know what's going to happen with this. But luckily I was able to show a few people, more other indie developers. And then they kind of gave me enough motivation to be like, no, I think this is cool. Just see if Steam wants it. And I remember emailing my Steam contact and just like literally fingers crossed, like just let me put it up for just a few bucks. I know it's a Flash game. I know it's a little piece of shit.
Yeah.
But it's cool, and I know I can make a little more money if I could really promote this thing. I could probably make more money than what Adult Swim might offer me, and I don't have to sell it. And then it turned out being like 10 times Meat Boy, so
yeah,
that was the right choice. But I was totally willing to do it because that's what it was kind of worth. It was like it was a whatever situation, but I know Florian is also very thankful for the decision. I'm grateful for Steam. And this was, of course, long before Steam opened the gates and let anybody come in and put their stuff up there.
Yeah, and I think Isaac really like thrived with that streaming culture as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, things were really bubbling at that point. I was just telling somebody the other day, like, so if I have a 3-year-old, 3.5-year-old, and I go to take her to parks and stuff with my wife, and sometimes there's people around, and you make conversation with other parents, and they always, what do you do for a living? And I'm like, I make games. And they're like, oh, anything I've played? And I'm like, I don't know. But but do you watch people stream on Twitch? And they're like, oh yeah, I watch it all the time. And I'm like, okay, these icons. There's a crying kid, and there's a little red guy with a thumbs up. You know those icons? And they're like, oh yeah, I know those icons. I'm like, that's me. That's what I did. And that was around that, like, when Twitch just started, when they contacted me, like, hey, can we use these icons, like Isaac's face and Meat Boy? And I'm like, sure. Yeah. I didn't know that Twitch was going to become this giant thing, and I didn't know how streamable my stuff was. Like, there was no concept of it. It just happened. Things just lined up. And the summer, probably about 8 months after Isaac came out, that was the boom, like the Twitch boom, like where everybody was streaming, even on YouTube and everything else. And that really was an amazing ad for the game, because initially Isaac didn't turn that many heads. It was, I think people cared about it because it was a game that, it's the Meat Boy guy's game or whatever. Yeah. And I got a few okay reviews. I got some 7s and 8s, and it was just like, a lot of people just saw it as like an homage to Zelda. A lot of people didn't replay it. There was only one other game out there, which was Spelunky, and it hadn't come out on console yet, so it wasn't a mainstream known game. So there wasn't any roguelike type games out there that encouraged replayability. And I think that was lost on a lot of people initially. And it wasn't until streamers kind of showed that. It's like they advertised it. And then it kind of really picked up. That summer was pretty insane to see the numbers just like multiply every day, selling like 10,000 copies plus. It was nuts.
And that kind of popularity eventually led you to you and Nicholas to partner up and re-release the game.
Yeah, I wanted to do more expansions. I did the free Halloween one, and then I did Wrath of the Lamb right before summer, and Flash, that was really difficult. Flash was breaking constantly. Flash wasn't really designed to make games. It was made to make websites and animations. So it was kind of just tacked on. So it was the FLA was super huge. It constantly got corrupted. It would like maybe 10% chance of success when publishing or before you got a crash. It was gnarly, and it got to the point where it was like, it's not really realistic, I don't think, to keep expanding this game like this. And I got contacted by Tyrone. He was always kind of, wandering around in the background whenever I go to GDC and stuff. And he's like, hey, initially he was like, I want to port Timefuck. He still says that to this day. He wants to port the Flash version of Timefuck to some handheld. And I'm like, okay. And then he really wanted Meat Boy. That was what he really wanted. He's like, I want to port Meat Boy. And then, after the expansion came out for Isaac and he was asking for Meat Boy, I'm like, what about Isaac? Like, Isaac at this point, like, it's more popular than Meat Boy, and it's selling like crazy, and we've hit the limit with it. Like, maybe we could just port it. Initially, it was just a port of the Flash version, and then it just kind of grew into more, and it would turn into 2 full years of development and a big expansion on top of the previous stuff. And super, super happy with that. I'm super, super happy with how Rebirth turned out. It was way more true to the initial vision, and working on something for 3 months rushed versus 2 years with a small team is night and day. So yeah, it turned out great. Yeah, and that really carried it into the future.
One thing that I've noticed is that a lot of the early items, they tend to be a little bit more meme-y or a little bit more reference. Like there's like the dead dove, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And whereas like the newer items, they're a little bit more straightforward. Was that just a shift in the way that you designed items over the years?
Yeah, I might have just run out of references. that I found funny. I think initially things, I'd say the Flash game was a lot more memey. But I don't know. I think what happened was I didn't necessarily take Isaac as seriously when it was the Flash version. I think probably expansion I started taking a little more seriously, and then with Rebirth, it became more of a thing. Like I tried to stay more true to my childhood, more true to Catholicism, pagan Satanist sort of references. Like I just tried to stay more true to the lore in a way, and not so much me now. Like I think the initial Flash game had a lot of memes in it because there was just dumb things that I thought were kind of funny then. And then as it became more of a real game, then I took it a little more seriously to kind of talk about weirder and to basically make it darker.
Yeah. The current true ending is pretty dark.
Yeah.
Like with Isaac, I guess, being really dead and his soul wandering the land.
Yep.
So will the next expansion pack, will that continue that story?
We're re-exploring other things.
Okay.
The cutscenes and stuff. So the way I write usually when I'm working on something, like currently right now working with Vin, we've got some loose, very like in Antibirth, it ended with, oh, it's just a dream. And that was whatever. And that's how it kind of concluded. And I don't want that kind of ending. And so I'm trying to merge what Vin had in place with the Witness and stuff like that, which will probably get a name change, and tie it into another aspect of the game that hasn't been explored as much, which I don't want to spoil. So I know where I'm going, but I don't know what the cutscenes will be. I know the themes, and I know what I'm adding to it, and I know what I'm taking from what Vin put in to make it work in the actual lore of the game. But it's not going to be an ending. It's just going to be a slightly different perspective on certain circumstances in the game that have been established previous.
Okay.
In order to expand the game from the final ending on, I need to make a new game. That's the reality of it.
Will you consider that in the future, or is that something right now with your hands full?
I'm definitely going to do a sequel to The Binding of Isaac for sure.
Okay.
I've had it designed on a rough design on paper for years and years. But it's one of those things where there are certain things I want to do first, because I know that this will probably be a 3-year project if I jump into it now. And, Legend of Bumbo is probably going to come out in the next 3 to 5 months. And then once that's out, I really want to throw myself into Genex, which has been, in limbo for years and years and years. And I know it's now officially out of limbo, and I want to be able to work on it again. So that's what I want to work on first, which will probably be a good 2 years of development. And then, of course, finishing up Repentance and, maybe some small things on the side. But then once that's out of the way, I'll take a look back at Isaac 2 stuff and see where I want to go. It'd be cool to do something like by the 10-year anniversary, at least announce something official. Yeah. I think that's a good way to do it.
Now, obviously, it's super early, but would you keep the same gameplay style for Isaac 2, or are you thinking something more different like Bumbo is?
It's going to be more true to the original. I'm not a fan of totally spinning the genre when people expect a specific thing.
Yeah.
So the design is designed around a bit of more of the same when it comes to the core mechanics. But I think of it as more like if Rebirth is a play on the original Legend of Zelda, then the next step would be to go to like Link to the Past or Link to the Past style. or even Game Boy version, something like that. So I have designs on paper that I'm positive work, and I even prototype things within I prototype things for Isaac 2 with greed mode. So that was when when we implemented greed mode, there were aspects of it that I wanted to explore and see how interesting specific things were. And that's why I put that in there. I knew it would be kind of fun, but I mostly wanted to see if specific mechanics would work and be interesting in this kind of environment, because I wanted to see if that would be viable for a sequel. Not to say that a sequel is going to be greed mode. It's not actually anything like it, but there are aspects of like a progressive store type thing, stuff like that. And it worked. So it kind of like, okay, I think this is doable. Okay. But yeah, one day, and I don't want to spill too many beans because I don't know if it'll be exactly like how I'm thinking it's going to be, or it'll be totally different, or I have no idea what it'll look like if we go 3D, if we go, higher resolution pixels, if we just do the same engine and try to get it done faster, I have no idea.
Yeah. So I guess let's go ahead and start talking about Bumbo. So there is a Bumbo item in Isaac. So what came first? Was it the idea of Bumbo, the game, or the item?
The item was first.
Okay.
It was a few years back, and James and I had finished Fingered, and it worked really well. The development was really smooth, and it was actually a pretty relaxing and fun experience for me. And we're like, oh, let's work on something else. And I kind of wanted to work on a puzzle game. I wanted to try to turn a match 4 type game into something interesting that I would play, because I kind of enjoy those games, but I'm not a fan of just randomly doing 1,000 combos that I have no control over in a game. Like I want a strategy based, match 4 system. I always wanted to do that. So that was the core design, and the theme was puppeted hobos.
Okay.
And it was basically the initial design was you had a garbage can. You were a hobo. You had a garbage can, and you had to sift through it by match 4 system in order to generate coins. So you're finding coins as you go deeper into it, and then you're trying to make clumps of trash to throw at other bums that are trying to get your coins. And it looked neat on paper, and I really liked the it was like cardboard cutout puppety. So I liked the way that it was potentially going to look. And then I think it was actually I was on a call with Tommy, and he I think he said something along the lines of you should just make it a Binding of Isaac game, because if you just tack Binding of Isaac on anything, it's going to sell well. And I laughed. And I was like, yeah. And then the first split second, I was like, wait, I'm making a game about bums, and there's a character that I really like. So Bumbo, the item, Bumbo for me is the name for any of the little bum friends, any of the little bums. Okay, and those bums, I've really liked. I liked their design, and I've always wanted to include them in something for a long time. And it actually stems from this person we called Bum Friend, which is a real life bum that would come around our old office and just hang out and ask for cans. Okay. And he eventually took a crap in our driveway, and we had to tell him to leave. But yeah, he mentioned that, and I was like, oh, well, I do have a character that people know that I like, and I could probably, and then it just all kind of fell together. It's like, oh, wait a minute, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized I could actually do a prequel to the Binding of Isaac thematically within this design, and I could talk about what happened before Isaac happened abstractly through the game. And I thought it was super cool and kind of untapped, and it kind of allowed us, me and James, to explore our childhoods in a similar, we both had similar kind of broken family style childhoods. And we're both creative kids, and we both made stuff out of cardboard and dot matrix printer paper and all that sort of stuff too. So we kind of like, volleyed back and forth on the style of the game and what would stay true to Isaac as well as true to our childhoods. And we kind of came up with this imaginary cardboard cutout universe style inside of a cardboard box, which has been a theme in like a lot of my games as well. So
Yeah.
it just kind of like stars aligned, and Bumbo was a meme at that point. So it seemed appropriate to kind of explore this character. So yeah, it was definitely a marriage of like Reddit and the Binding of Isaac and an idea that I had for a game about hobos, and it just all kind of fell together.
Yeah, and is there a lot of item crossover with Binding of Isaac, or will there be a lot of new items?
There's some item crossover. There's a lot of reference. Because I want to stay true to the prequel aspect. I wanted there to be enough nods to be like, oh yeah, I get it. I get what he's going with there. Like that eventually became this item in Isaac. So there's definitely a lot of that, and a lot of the themes, and a lot. And currently in Repentance, I'm actually reversing that and putting in some of the enemies from Bumbo into Repentance, so it kind of works both ways. So yeah, the mechanics. There's going to be dice. There's going to be Yum Heart, stuff like that. The kind of foundational elements that you need in most games that have like a stat based system of like strength, HP, and movement points, dexterity, stuff like that. If it works, I try to put it in, but I would say about 75% of the items in Bumbo are new and unique.
Okay. With the character select screen, I think with one of the streams we've seen so far, it said like Bumbo the Weird, or like Bumbo the Warrior, maybe. So is that just one Bumbo, or is there multiple?
There are multiple Bumbos. Okay. I mean, I didn't go through cutscenes and make different Bumbos, but there's Bumbo. Bumbo the Brave is the Mario of the bunch. He's the well-rounded fighter. And then there's Bumbo the Quick, who's the thief, who's all about movement points, and he's kind of a glass cannon-ish. Well, he's not really glass cannon-ish. He's more of a lots of movement, multiple stab wound type character, like backstabby type guy. Okay. And then there's Bumbo the Stout, who's the healer, and then there's Bumbo the Weird, who is the wizard. And there may or may not be more. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay. And you say that a lot of your games come from personal experiences. If I recall correctly, like The End is Nigh is from your frustration with video game development, and Isaac is from your religious experiment. So what exactly are you drawing from for Bumbo?
I would just say growing up. I'm re-exploring aspects of the Binding of Isaac when it comes to growing up. It may stay more true to my personal life, just kind of like a split family environment. And this is hard to explain without you guys knowing what the game is actually about, because you're seeing just a retarded little character running through and punching stuff. But there is a story that I can't spoil. I don't know how to explain it without totally, breaking that fourth wall. But maybe I shouldn't. I shouldn't talk about what it actually means yet, because people don't know about it yet, and I don't want to spoil the fun. But the actual game is just more of an exploration of being a creative kid and like playing in an imaginary world with your cardboard cutout characters, and that's basically it.
Yeah. So you've mentioned this before, and I wanted to talk about this. Your image of a cardboard box, it keeps coming up in your games. It happens in Isaac, it happens in Time Fuck. What exactly happens when you go into that cardboard box?
I think a cardboard, I wish I could tell you. I don't really know. There's just some sort of significance with the cardboard box theme when it comes to my work, and I think a lot of it has to do with moving a lot as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So cardboard boxes were always everywhere, and making spaceships and other things where you put the cardboard box over you and draw all the dials and stuff inside. And as a kid, it looks like this super complicated thing that is really cool. And then you grow up and you see it and you don't understand what it was. And then, I found a cardboard box when my grandma passed away that was full of my work when I was a kid that I hadn't seen at all. And that was kind of like a pivotal moment in my career where it kind of like spun me. And then just kind of the abstract box aspect of being stuck in a box. And then homelessness, living in a box. There was a comic I really liked called The Max growing up, and the whole comic started with him inside of a cardboard box in an alleyway. And I really like the imagery of that. So there's just a lot of different elements to it. Just feels like it has substance and meaning somehow to me, the box. So I use it a lot, but it's not just one thing, and it's hard to explain exactly why I use it, but it just seems honest and true to who I am. So I use it.
Yeah. So in like some instances it could be like a positive thing, but in other instances it can be a negative.
For sure. For sure. It has a lot of meaning, I guess. I never really thought about it. It made sense to me, and I used it, and I never really analyzed why, but there's a lot there. I mean, I moved as a kid. I moved from the ages from my mom and dad's divorce when I was 5 till I finally moved out of the house when I was 17. I probably moved house to different houses at least 13 or 14 times.
Oh, wow.
So it was a constant thing, constant moving. And I think that's a big aspect, the box thing too. There was just boxes around. My house was always full of cardboard boxes full of stuff, like unpacked stuff. And, once you unpacked and things, things were safe again, then you could utilize those boxes and stuff creatively.
Yeah.
It's like what you had around to draw on.
And that's where a lot of your creativity came from at a young age.
I guess so. It was definitely an escape from the chaos of growing up in a fucked up household.
Yeah.
You got to just disappear. It was definitely a lot of that, and a lot of I had a little recorder, and I'd record shows when I was 5, 6 years old. I found them recently. I would record myself cussing so I could hear the bad words.
So let's go on and talk a little bit about Genex.
Sure.
So it's a project that you essentially restarted. I know you're still in the development, early prototype stage, right?
Yeah. Once again, back in the prototype stages. Yeah.
Yeah. Are there any ideas that you've dropped from the original teaser?
Not completely. So yeah, it's the development for Genex is such a weird one. And I don't want to. I was super excited about it from the get-go. It was something I really, really wanted to do, and I would say 6 months into development on it, I kind of felt like maybe I was the only one that was really, really into it.
Yeah.
And I definitely think Tommy wanted to do more Meat Boy stuff, which ended up happening. And we just kind of hit a wall with it. And you can't force somebody to be excited about something they're not excited about. It's just not going to happen. And having to put that project down was heartbreaking for me, for sure. It felt so inspired. It felt so cool. And I was so happy to be working on it. But then the realization that it's just not going to happen. And at the time I thought was never going to come back.
Yeah.
But 6 years later, 5 years later, I don't even know when, I was able to, kind of reacquire the IP, and Tyler's like, let's do it. And we can prototype some stuff. So it was pretty cool to take a step back over that many years of not working on it, but still having it always in the back of my head. Like for a while, I thought even if I had the IP back, like what would I do? Like, could I even work on it, or would it always feel like depressing in that way of like a stunted, thing I could never finish? But it's definitely been. We're trying to breathe new life into it. So the core elements of the game are still planned. Like you're still going to have cats that you obviously breed and mutate in your house. But I think it would be more fun to explore some sort of Isaac-y aspect, some sort of roguelike randomly generated combat sort of stuff with multiple cats. So right now we're currently trying to crack the code on how to take a game, and I want to embody that what a cat is, like this ball of chaos that you can't completely control. But I also don't want people to be frustrated and trying to play a game where you can't completely control it. So it's this kind of dance of like giving them their own AI, but also allowing you to suggest what they do. I don't know. Tyler's been playing that Dota auto chess, and I know that he's kind of says that there are elements of it that he thinks will maybe come out in Genex, but it's so early, and I'm not really working on it right now because I got to finish Bumbo. Yeah. And once that's done, though, I will throw myself in. But the goal is to make it an actually more long-winded, bloated experience. I mean, and the cool thing is like a lot of the stuff's still there. So like a lot of the old art, like I did probably 800 pieces of furniture, like some stupid amount, like Animal Crossing size, ridiculous stuff. Yeah. And I'm gonna have to redo all the cat stuff and then the animations and stuff like that. But that won't be too bad. It'll probably take 8 months. And I'm working with Crystal, who did a lot of art for Four Souls, and he's been doing backgrounds for the game, which are so it'll look more Cupheady. Like initially, that was what I was trying to go for, old school cartoon black and white look, and then Cuphead came out, and it's like, okay, I can't make it look that cool. That's not going to happen. But I think we can get pretty close to that though, without totally making it look exactly like it. So that's basically where we're at with it, and it'll be really fun to dive back into that because I'm still very much in love with the characters and the concept.
Yeah, I'm very hyped for the concept of Genex. Obviously, I don't know much about it, but just from the teaser, I was very excited and very disappointed.
I think it's going to be really fucking cool. Like honestly, it's something that I'm excited to work on for sure.
Like in my head, like I was trying to explain this to my girlfriend. It's like Pokemon but with cats. Is that right?
It's still definitely Pokemon with cats. That's definitely still the focus of it. Like I want it to be my Pokemon for sure. Randomly generated Pokemon. That's definitely where it's at. But I want it to be a little more actiony and not so strategic.
Okay.
Still strategy, but more RTS, not turn-based.
Are you still incorporating like legacy and like breeding?
Yep, for sure. In fact, Tyler and I and my other friends, we tend to play a lot of legacy games, and we're trying to incorporate the idea of permanence. Something specific happening. Like if you kill a specific boss in a certain way, then that boss is dead forever, or something along those lines. Some aspect of a legacy beyond a legacy within cats. Like not so much just like passed down genes, but also permanence within the game when you do specific things, or maybe even story trees with the characters where once you do something, it's done and you can't go back.
Okay. And 1 second. Okay. So for The End is Nigh, the ending is pretty bleak, and you mentioned that was like born out of your frustrations. How are you doing now?
Better. The End is Nigh was like a healing point. Like I really, really, honestly was pretty much done. Like I had everything about game development had gone sour for me, and personal relationships gone sour, and it's just bad. Like it left a really bad taste in my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
I questioned what the point of what I was doing was. And I guess I also kind of like, well, I've got money. Like, what am I doing this for? Looking at that again, and then just feeling, I felt like the industry just felt gross. It felt like everybody was motivated by different things. And I felt like an outcast and an alien. Like I wanted different things, and I don't know if I belong here, which I don't. And I need to be okay with that. But, yeah, it was bleak, and it made me question what I put into Meat Boy, because Meat Boy was about it doesn't matter if you win or lose. It's not about the end game goal of winning the race. It's about running, because that's where the adventure is. But then it was kind of like, what if the adventure was the wrong adventure to go on? And like the whole time you've been going on this adventure that you feel is going to pay off regardless of win or lose, you've been neglecting another more important thing, like living.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I was feeling, and that's definitely what I was exploring. Like a lot of different things too, like a lot of difficulty just with anxiety and depression, and just feeling utterly hopeless, and then feeling like, oh, things are going to get easier, and then they don't, or things are going to end and then they don't, and then it just keeps going and keeps going, and it just feels painfully grueling. I didn't know how the hell I was supposed to talk about that within like a game that was supposed to be enjoyable. Like, how am I supposed to stress people out and still make a good game?
Yeah,
which was a huge challenge. And then coming off of like, okay, I'm making a game that's a platformer, and one of the games I'm most known for is a critically acclaimed platformer. And how am I supposed to put it right next to it? Isn't that a scary thing to do? Yes, it is a scary thing to do, and that's the point. So it's been, at that point, it had been like 8 years since I worked on Meat Boy, so I better be better at it.
Yeah.
Like, and I want to see where I'm at. I want to see where I've grown and what I've learned. So it was, again, a lot of things, and it was a mess, and it was super depressing. And I think initially after the release, it still was depressing, and I still didn't know what I wanted to do. But over time, and kind of, it definitely purged a lot of things and gave me a lot of answers. But I still had to acclimate to the new environment of what exactly I wanted out of what I was doing. And the funny thing about the ending was, I remember telling James, okay, yeah, I'm depressing ending where everything's bad. And he's like, well, maybe you should think about making it slightly more uplifting. And I'm trying to think of like, how could I do that without compromising, with what I initially wanted? So I made him smile. So initially he didn't smile. Initially that was the end. And it was true to what I was feeling at the time, where a final end to this all seemed like a relief. And I wanted it to feel like a relief when it ended. And so I made him smile, and it changed the ending considerably. Still depressing, but
yeah.
One of these days I'm going to make a really great ending, but he's going to be so happy. No, I'm not going to do that. It's never going to happen. It's always bad.
Yeah. Well, Colin, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I got a few questions.
Sorry.
No, that's
Sorry.
cool. I got more like general questions. I've noticed that Binding of Isaac, you mentioned it with Genex, and I know you're not working on Meat Boy forever, but I don't know how much of a hand you had in the creative process of that initially. A lot of your games focus on random generation, and I've played a whole bunch of indie games with random generation, and I always find that a big problem with some of these games are that they almost use random generation as some sort of crutch to sort of pad out the game, and to a degree it can end up feeling not natural. Like, like this doesn't feel like a game created by a person. It feels like a game created by you know, what the game itself kind of came up with. So, but I don't get that feeling when I play Binding of Isaac. So I guess the question is, what, like, is there a process on, I mean, I'm sure there is, but what is the process behind, I guess, creating that random generation to keep things feeling natural?
Human.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of old roguelikes just threw everything out there. And the only restriction was like, okay, on chapter 1, here are the things that can be randomized, and that's it. Just who cares like how long the corridors are? It's like, no, there's no real rhyme and reason for anything. It's just all thrown together. And a lot of other roguelikes do that as well, and I don't think that's the way to go. I understand the need for especially programmers. Like, it would be a dream to be able to make some sort of AI that actually generates something creatively, but that's just not going to happen, at least not for a very, very long time. Yeah. And even if it does, it still is never going to feel like a person put their hands in and put it together. So what I usually do, it's something similar to what Derek Yu does with Spelunky, is he does chunks. So like with Spelunky, there's different chunks that are all randomized and they're placed together specifically. With Isaac, it's rooms. So I basically go through and I specifically make the rooms in a specific way. And I put specific enemies down in specific places. And what I'll usually do is certain enemies will, of course, have a slight chance of being, a champion, as you guys know. Mm-hmm. Or sometimes as another enemy, which will be appropriate for the level. Sometimes that's actually within the editor. Sometimes it's within the code. So it's like, okay, a leaper could also be a blister or whatever. And then sometimes I'll put down a rock, and then I'll also make it a 50-50 chance of being, not a rock or a fire or whatever else. Mm-hmm. So which enables people to go through certain areas. So I specifically design all these things in a very direct way. And then I have certain things that are scrambled, but not ever completely. It's all very handmade still, but then I just make a lot of it and then it randomizes it. And it's always different. So it's always different, but people can even recognize the structures of the levels. Like, you recognize, even though there's probably a few thousand at this point, like even per chapter and stuff, you get hundreds and hundreds and close to, I think it's 1,000. But for especially the early chapters, you can still recognize specific rooms and stuff like that. They become infamous, especially the really bad ones. But that's how I do it. I want to have my hand in design. That's probably one of the things that I'm the best at. So I didn't want to go into a game like this and not have some hand at level design.
Yeah. All right, that's cool.
If that makes, hopefully that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. It totally makes sense. Sorry if these questions are like randomly like sporadic because they're on different topics.
I don't. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. One thing that I always found really interesting back in the day, of course, Meat Boy was held up as being sort of the darling of Xbox Live Arcade, and it also was supposed to go to WiiWare, and then all that happened.
Yeah.
And it's sort of interesting because back then, the idea of digital only smaller titles were such a out there concept that they had to be put onto like under a banner like Live Arcade or WiiWare. But now they're put onto the the storefront just like any other big AAA game on the market.
Yeah.
And I guess my question with that is, do you feel like, I mean, of course, in some ways that's a plus to see smaller, more personal titles be put up there with the big boys, but at the same time, do you feel like losing that banner might have removed some sort of special pedestal for certain smaller games that may have not gotten attention unless they were given sort of like their own little section of the market?
Yeah, things are kind of fucked up. I mean, they're never going to be fair. Like, that's just a reality. Like, things are never going to be fair. Even the more fair they get. I mean, you look at Steam, and I understand the logic behind no gatekeeping and just letting anybody put their stuff up on there, and then, but it changes the game. Like, and it becomes like the games that do well are the games that go viral.
Yeah.
And the games that are streamable. But what happens to the games that aren't streamable at all? And what happens to the games that aren't viral at all? You know, even if they're good, sometimes they get a little lost in the shuffle. I still like to think that the really breakout ones will still always find an audience. And there's so many people out there. But I don't know. Like, it's pretty cool to see big name indies making really big projects that are really cool, and they just go straight up onto, you know, PlayStation, Xbox, and whatever else, and they're just right along all the other releases. Like, it shows a lot of respect for the developers. And you know, there's a time and a place for everything, realistically. I think if you're a small time developer and you're working on your third or fourth title or whatever else, and you still don't have a name for yourself, and you're discouraged by the fact that you're not a big name indie yet, just understand that there's a time and a place for everything, and that you will eventually get your turn once you keep going forward. And just be really look at yourself and look at your work and make sure you're being as critical as possible so you can grow, so you can get where you need to be. I don't know of anybody who's unfairly pushed up, and I don't know of anybody who's really like paid their dues and is just not getting any kind of push out at all. Like, I've just never really seen that at all. I think it's a lot to expect if you're new to the game and you're like, okay, I've made a few games and I've got this game I really love and it's great, but nobody is pushing my game out to console. Nobody is talking about my game. There's probably a reason behind it. Mm. Mm-hmm. It's harsh, but it's like if you want to grow, if you want to be in this kind of environment, this super competitive and artistic environment, you have to be critical of yourself. Like, that is probably one of the best skills that you can have, is being realistic and critical. Like, I remember I would always show my stuff to Jonathan Blow if I really wanted a very critical and honest answer. He wasn't going to sugarcoat it. And usually what he would say was something true to my inner dialogue, which was like, I know the shortcomings of my work. I know where the shortcomings lie, and I know what I can do to improve them. But it takes a long time to get there, because it hurts to feel like you're just, certain aspects of you aren't that good yet, aren't that developed yet, and you've got to keep working on it. I don't know, that kind of like, I veered off into a different direction, but
no, it's fine.
That's usually the direction that I go because I know that there's it's like a forum type indie forum thing. A lot of people would bitch and moan about, you know, why they didn't get on XYZ, and no one would, you know, rarely would people say it's probably because your game is simply just not there yet. And that was always the reality, but nobody wants to be the guy that does that. Mm-hmm. So that's why everybody else, they need to be that person to themselves.
I think that's why
nobody else has to.
I think that's why I kind of appreciate the Nindies directs that Nintendo's been doing, because even though you still have some people that go, which I think it's weird that people love to dump on AAA games and AAA practices and hold up indie games in really high regards, but I also find it weird that those same people are also quick to be like, well, indie games aren't, you know, like real hype pushers, which I think is weird, but that's why I like the Nindies directs. It's Nintendo giving them a really nice kind of place to shine. For sure. It's not that indies aren't there, because there's plenty of indies that are huge. Yeah, exactly.
And that push the numbers like crazy, but it's not to say that every indie developer is that.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a tricky thing. It's definitely a tricky thing, because of course you gotta make a name for yourself. You gotta get your shit out there and want to get attention, but you gotta play the game. Like, there's simply rules and regulations, and there's reasons why things happen, and you just gotta game it. Like, everything can be gamed. Yeah, we should all know that. We're in the industry, so we're in the industry of gaming, and like I did a lot of shit that I don't like doing. In fact, like I hated doing. I got pushed into being a press guy from the get-go, from the early 2000s. Like I wasn't good at it, but I was the only one willing to do it, and I did it for so long that I got pretty okay at it, and I got really. And it just became, okay, well, I'm just going to sit down and speak honestly about what I'm passionate about. And hopefully that comes through and people are like, oh, whatever this guy's working on must be cool because he likes it. You just learn, and you have to wear so many hats, and you've just got to put in your time in order to get there.
We're going to move on to viewer questions now. We've had some people asking some questions in chat. If you'd like to ask a question, feel free to type it in chat. Top priority goes to people who ask questions through Super Chat. Thanks if you donate, by the way. Schnitzel from Chowder asks, to Edmund, has Eurogamer ever apologized about the Meat Boy for Smash Brothers fiasco? Additionally, hoping for the fish collection.
He means Gish.
Oh, Gish. Yeah, there we go.
Wait, what? I don't even know what happened. What happened?
I guess Eurogamer did something regarding Meat Boy for Smash Brothers.
I don't know.
That's.
I'm a little removed.
Weird, yeah.
So yeah, just so people know, like I left Team Meat and the IP about 3 years ago. So anything that has to do with Meat Boy stuff, I don't really see unless people like directly tell me and they're like, "Hey, something Meat Boy." So I'm not involved in anything Meat Boy anymore, which is weird, I know, but it's where I'm at, and so I don't know. I don't know exactly what the fiasco is. I haven't been a part of many Meat Boy fiascos, so I don't know.
Apparently, it stems from some quote taken out of context from 2013. It seems.
So it was forever ago.
Yeah,
I don't know. I have no idea. I've had the press. Of course, everybody had time of being misquoted and whatever else. My favorite was I did an interview, and they asked me what my feelings about piracy of video games were, and I said I don't think it's that big of a deal. Because at its worst, at its worst, if somebody pirates my game and they really like it, they're probably going to end up telling somebody else about it. And that person, you're not going to be like, hey, I stole this game. You should play it. It's really good. They're just going to be like, hey, I like this game. It's really good. And he did the story. It was on IGN ages ago. He did the story, and the title of it was Edmund McMillen Wants You to Steal His Games.
Oh, my God.
And I got fucking pissed. And this was an in-person interview. He came to my like, it was like, what? And I'm like, I know you. And I came over to him and I'm like, what the fuck is this? I did not say this. And then it's like, and the whole thing was an opinion piece too. He like is interjecting all of his own opinions that he did not give me any chance to respond to in any way, shape, or form. It was just like, Edmund says this, which I think is wrong because blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, this isn't how this fucking works. Like, and I had him take it down and I had him change a bunch of stuff, and then eventually it was just taken down completely because it was just a shitty thing. But yeah, I haven't had full hit pieces done, but people have fucked up a lot of different things.
Yeah.
It happens. I mean, whatever.
Another user asks, what is your take on the entire Epic Store deal and exclusivity?
I know what they're doing. If I was them, I would do it that way too, because that's how business works. That's how consoles get sold. So, that's how it's always worked. You pay money and you get your special treatment, and then you get people to come on board, and it's whatever. It's not something that I'm going to do, and something I will do. I'll definitely work with Epic for sure, but I don't really want to do any kind of exclusivity. I don't think it's good to do, but I understand why people do it. It's money is money, and people need to pay their bills and whatever else. But yeah, they got to do what they got to do, and they're doing what they're doing. And I think that competition is good overall. I mean, it benefits everybody when there's competition. And there's a bit of like a online, store war because there hasn't been much. There hasn't been any competition on Steam, so it's good to have competition because it improves everything. Every what's the rising tide raises all ships. I can't remember what the it's like.
That sounds right.
Yeah, everybody's going to benefit from this. A lot of people will get mad, and it's just another console war situation where people are going to get pissed because they like Steam, et cetera, et cetera. And I love Steam. I'm not going to go exclusive, so it's not going to matter either way. But it's whatever. I mean, understand why people do it. Understand why Epic does it. I'd probably do the same thing if I was in their shoes and had a shitload of money and I wanted, to make a name for myself. But it's good overall for developers.
What are your thoughts on cloud gaming?
I don't have that much of an opinion on it. I'm not gonna like. What do I play these days? I play Overwatch and Pokemon Go and Baba Is You. Those are the 3 games that I'm currently playing. So Baba Is You would be playable over that, right? Pokemon Go is not, obviously, and Overwatch isn't because of the lag. I don't know. I don't care. I'm not a huge fan of doing any sort of like Netflixy type game thing because I don't think that it's financially great for developers. I think it's better when it's a store and people actually pay for your stuff. And I'm not looking forward to that environment because it's going to totally change the landscape again. So I'm going to be an old curmudgeon about it. I don't see the benefits, personally. I understand people are like, I don't have the system. I don't want to pay XYZ for it. And I understand that aspect. But the games that you're going to need some beefy system for aren't going to be playable on cloud.
Yeah.
So you're going to miss out on that. But again, I don't really care that much. So it's a whatever thing. I'll see where it goes, and I'll just stand in the corner and wait.
Clockwise asks, I've heard a lot about Edmund's movie and music inspirations, but are there any novels that have been a big influence on his work?
So I'm not what you would call a reader. I have dyslexia. It's difficult for me to So it took me a really long time to be able to read in front of people. Like, it is a nightmare. Growing up, I would have to strategically find ways to leave the room, and we would do open reading, when everybody would pass a book around and read, passages and stuff. It was a nightmare. It was a fucking nightmare. And just reading in general, especially fiction, anything that it's just always been a struggle. So I never could enjoy it. Graphic novels, on the other hand, work for me. The last one I read was the My Friend Dahmer, which is like a little autobiography kind of a guy who was friends with Jeffrey Dahmer in high school, which was interesting. But yeah, I'm not much of a reader. I read comics somewhat, but even not that often. So I can't really say I've been inspired by any at all. I read Home Alone, the book.
Home Alone, the book.
Adaptation of the movie when I was like 10. I remember that. I tried to read Lord of the Rings. I couldn't.
Oh
no. We actually had a question from Shitsoul, who asked, how were you approached about Isaac's inclusion in Blade Strangers?
I wasn't. Tyrone showed me some for both the games, for the puzzle fightery kind of game and Blade Strangers. He just showed me that he was putting quote and some other ones in there, and I was like, why don't you put Isaac in there? Mostly because I just wanted to see how I would look in those styles. Mm-hmm. That's it. Okay. I said you should put Isaac in, and he's like, why not? The cool thing too is I got the in the puzzle game, which I really should remember, which I can't. You guys know what it's called? I feel like such a fucking shithead for
Crystal something. Yeah,
Crystal Crisis.
Yeah,
Crystal Crisis. Yeah.
Yep.
Crystal Crisis. The 3D model in Crystal Crisis was used to make a giant Isaac that was on display at PAX, which now is in my home.
Oh,
So
nice.
if anything, just that. Just having that from that, it was fucking great. I'm down.
So you weren't very involved with like approving or anything like hands-on with the animation.
No, yeah, I was pretty fucking hands off, but they obviously knew what was going on because they did everything right.
Mm-hmm.
It's really fascinating. Carly Voss or Vass asks, what is your family's reaction to your success?
Weird. They don't tell you. You always hear stories about, when somebody has financial success and how family will come out of the woodwork, with their hands open. And that definitely happened initially, especially with the movie. The movie definitely didn't help anything, because then a lot of people that I have never talked to or haven't talked to since I was a child started coming to my house and wanting to hang out and whatever else, and then asking for jobs and talking to me about their bills, just stuff like that. And it was just like and it probably wouldn't happen to everybody, but I grew up very poor and my family's poor, and the people in my family mostly are still poor. And it mostly due to life decisions, not because it's just, but it caused issues. So I kind of had to, it shows you who your real friends are, because, there's people who want to come and use you for whatever. And then there's the people who just want to hang out and have fun, and it's not about, they don't talk to you about their money problems. And it fucks things up too, because then when somebody's genuinely wanting to talk about a problem that they have that has to do with their finances, you start questioning, and you go like, what? Are you trying to get something from me? That's so weird. But I definitely went through that with my mom, and it was pretty difficult, and my sister as well. Because you want to be helpful, but you don't want to enable them for sure. And I didn't realize that the moment you help somebody like that, like my first and my sister was like, I can't pay rent, so I'll pay rent. So I paid her rent. And then the moment it wasn't a loan, because how is my sister going to have money if she can't pay her rent? It's just not going to happen. You can't expect it to ever be paid back. So it's like, what do you do? You suddenly become a dick, really. How can I not then question every single expenditure? When my sister goes and buys something stupid, it's like, okay, well, I just paid your fucking rent, and now you're wasting money on this. It's like, I don't want to be in this situation where I'm my sister's father. It's not a position I want to be in. And the same goes for my mother. I helped what I could, and then it got to a point where I'm like, listen, don't talk to me about financial stuff anymore. I'm just going to have to be a villain now. And I become a villain, and that's basically it. People will just take, and then the moment you say slow down, then you are a villain. And like I said, it just shows you who your real friends are, who your real family is, essentially. So my success has caused issues with my family. There's nothing good that has come out of it, sadly. But you kind of learn as you go, and you learn to keep boundaries.
Yeah. Well, on a more positive note, with Binding of Isaac 4 Souls, I think you're working on that with your wife, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that has been a pretty rewarding experience.
Yeah, it was great. That was an amazing breath of fresh air. It was so cool. The whole development was so cool. And it wasn't some big financial, I finally got paid from it. And I got paid more. I mean, I got paid more than all the artists, but not much. You know what I mean? It wasn't a huge financial bonus for me, but it wasn't about that. It was about doing something really cool and fun that involved my wife and my friends, and we all had a blast. Really, quite honestly, the whole thing was fun. It was very taxing and grueling. A lot of work, a lot of social media type stuff it was pretty surprising looking back how active I was, or we were, every single day, constantly go. And then afterwards, when it was finally over, it was just what do you do? Your life was so full. It's at one point where you couldn't even think, and then it's done, and you're just sitting there, And it was just, it felt very akin to finishing a game and having that like postpartum depression of like wanting to still work on it, but it was worse because you were so used to interacting with so many people socially, and then it just ended. But it was a rush, man. It was super fun. I totally dig it. I really liked working in digital, having things printed out, and working with Studio 71. Garima and Javon were super great to work with. I learned a lot from them, and I don't know if and when I'll do more of that because again it was pretty crazy, but I'm sure eventually it'll be like, hey, what could I work on in the future that's like a physical thing, and do a Kickstarter campaign for it and have fun again when it comes to that sort of stuff. It was cool.
And you've worked with a lot of artists from the community on forums. Have you ever considered like opening your own game studio or your own studio in general?
I would never want to like. I don't know. I feel so weird about being responsible for other people when it comes to paying their bills. I definitely be the kind of guy who worry so much and then neglect my own stuff. Like I'd be too focused on making sure my employees got paid and then not paying myself and not catering to any of my own personal needs. I just get too focused, feel too guilty. I just don't want to be responsible because maybe I just don't think I'm that much of a responsible person. I don't know. But like I said, like I'm working with Crystal on Genex. I might end up working with more people. I really enjoyed working with all the artists on this, and I'm working with multiple people for Repentance. It's not just Finn, and yeah, I don't think I'll ever want a full studio of people though. I don't know. I don't see that. It just seems really stressful. Like the idea seems so stressful that I would never want to touch it. And I don't really necessarily need a large team to do any of the projects that I want to do.
Yeah.
So I think I just rather not.
And you've worked with so many people over the years.
Yeah, it's always changing.
Yeah. Is that like how you find your creativity? Is that what inspires you? It's like working with different people and feeding off them?
Yeah, definitely somewhat. Like it feels like riffing off of something like in a band or something, like where like with Tommy, I think I was riffing off our sense of humor. Like our humor was very similar. And I was definitely riffing off of that, which is why a lot of like the press and stuff was so fun, and the game was funny and silly, and it just worked. And then it's always different with everybody. Like it's always a completely different experience. And I definitely, I think I enjoy it. I enjoy I get bored easily, and I tend to just move around and want to work with different people, and that's just how I've been.
There's been a couple of other prototypes that you've worked on over the past years, but then they haven't come to fruition. Is there something that you like that you feel early on, or is that something that just happens after?
I try to have enough foresight to know if I'm working on something, if it's not going to happen. More recently, Ouroboros.
Yeah.
That game became The End Is Nigh. We kind of we got to a point where I think we were probably about 50% into the game, and it was getting close. And then we started noticing that people were complaining about motion sickness of the spinning part, and I started feeling it. Like we tried to correct it and stuff. So that was always in the back of my head of like, I'm worried that we're gonna spend all this time on this, and it's gonna end up being something that's gonna be bashed because it's making people sick. But it was around that time where we were going to take a break from it and just prototype something similar. It's like really simple. And the one thing that was shining pretty bright in Ouroboros was the platforming aspects. Like the controls were really, really, really tight. And I feel like we improved greatly on like the Meat Boy controls, kind of like it was like we re-explored those kind of controls, but with more of a fluidity between the transitions. And add a little bit more to what you can do. Just adding the ability to drop faster by pressing down added so much to the control scheme that it was like, wow, this is... And that was in Ouroboros, because when you press down, you turn to a ball, or you turn to his head, and you drop. Just that. It was just the drop was like, hey, this is potentially really cool. Why don't we just make something simple? Like make a little simple, platformer. Initially, it was going to be a free game. It was just going to be the cartridges that are in The End is Nigh, and we were going to give them to... It was going to be an ARG where different streamers get them, and then they were going to be super. And then when a streamer beat that area, they will unlock the next cartridge, and they have to give the cartridge to another streamer. That was going to be the game. But then it was so fun. It was like, oh, this is really cool. And then once you spend 6 months on something, it's like, well, you probably should sell it. We've been spending money on it, so we should probably sell it. But a lot of other projects, like Gish 2, we worked on that for a year, and that never released. Hitler's Must Die, we worked on for 8 or 9 months. It never released. That one I really loved. I'd love to revisit that. Shit happens. Some life happens, and most of the games that I worked on where it just didn't happen, it mostly had to do with just life changing some aspect of me or who I was working with, and then it not being able to release. But I try to prototype stuff as much as possible. But I think I know enough now to just keep the prototype small and simple, and then if it's cool, just put it on the back burner until whatever projects I'm working on now are done, and bring it back.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of Ouroboros and Time Clock and stuff like that, you have the recurrent character Steve.
Mm-hmm.
What is
Steven?
Steven, yes. What's up with that? What's up with Steven?
What's up with Steven? Steven's just a character that I've always tend to write about are some aspect of me, and Steven is the crazy one. He is insanity. He is how I feel when I'm losing my fucking mind, when I'm in full panic attack mode and I can't leave the house. That's Steven. Yeah. And that's who I go towards when I want to make a bodies that. And that's who he is. That's the character. He's one of my favorites for sure. I like exploring the chaos of him. I like being able to write. The writing style for Time Fuck was just super bizarre, improvised, and it was really fun to just write nonsense nonstop. That's who Steven is.
Do you consider your games to have a shared universe?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think as time passed, I have focused more on the actual connections. I know Genex is connected to The End is Nigh as well as The Binding of Isaac. I can't say how, but I know they are. And I think all of my games are connected in some weird way that the dots, I think, will connect more as I make more of them. Mm-hmm. But for right now, they're all in the make them, and they embody some aspect of me. I'm just rebuilding myself through different games. Hopefully a better version.
Let's see if we got any more viewer questions here. What's Bumbo's meta progression like?
The actual gameplay. It would be okay. So the basic progression of Bumbo is similar to Isaac meets something like Slay the Spire, where you go through a bunch of different rooms and you kill enemies in the most optimal way to hopefully yield more coins, or the most dangerous way to yield little more coins. And then you will get to a treasure room, which will give you a spell. And then you will get to another treasure room if you go past a certain point and there's another hard area. Another treasure room, get another spell. You kill a boss, you get a ton of money. You go to a casino zone. And then in this area, you can start stat padding. And that costs the most on this little roulette wheel. And then you can start modifying your spells like the cost, the damage, and whatever else, and then buying or acquiring trinkets, which are permanent mods, kind of like Isaac, and then you progress to the next level, and it keeps going, and eventually you start having to get rid of some spells for better spells, or buffing your stuff up as you go, and that's basically the what it looks like behind the scenes. You're just the simplest version of how to explain how Bumbo plays is that, like, it's very Isaac-y with a little bit of like card drafting spell stuff, because you're kind of modifying your deck as you go, and you want. So each spell costs specific types of mana, and you get the mana from doing different combos of the different colors on the board. So if your main attack spell uses bones, and you happen to also have another spell that you acquire that gives you health, that also uses bones, it would probably be good to re-roll the mana required for one of those spells, because you don't want to overlap like that, because you're going to run out of those bones essentially. So there's a lot of modding. There's a lot of modding items and comboing and stuff like that. It's pretty unique, but and I hope people like it as much as I do.
How long will it take for a player to get through one session?
I don't know yet. That's currently what we're actually working on. We're working on a full vertical slice of the whole game to try to, because we've been shaving it down. Like 6 months ago, it was taking too long to beat a level, and it just felt like it should be shorter. It should be harder. Like I would much rather have a more difficult but short game than a boring slog where it's just like, like I've got to go through 20 levels and fight a boss, and I'm just schooling all these things. I know people enjoy that in Isaac. I know, like, getting OP and then just walking through all the rooms, destroying everything, but it's not the same with this, because this is a puzzle game. So you're still going to have to go through a bunch of different, basic puzzle movement things in order to kill the enemies in the room. It's not just going to be like you walk in and then your combo works perfectly and you kill everything. So we've been trimming it down to have an optimal. I wouldn't want any gameplay session lasting more than an hour from start to finish. I think that's a good sweet spot. I felt the same way about Isaac.
And the game will also feature multiple endings?
Yes, there will be multiple endings, and there'll be multiple rewards for beating the game with different characters, unlocking different things. And there's, of course, more unlocks for beating the game repeatedly after you've unlocked the endings.
The Lay Flipper asks, is the Basement Collection ever come into the Switch?
I don't think it can. I think it would need to be completely rebuilt. I don't want, like finding all the people that I made the game with, re-getting permission for that, and then having to split up payments and that sort of stuff. It's just a pain in the butt. And like I said, I don't really own the Meat Boy IP, so I think that would be in limbo as well. It's just a mess. So no. Yeah, it's. I'm glad it's out. I'm glad it's where it is. I'm glad it's there. I'm glad people can check it out, because it's full of a ton of behind the scenes stuff. I just threw as many bonuses as I possibly could in there, but it's going to be a PC release only.
How many IPs do you actually own?
All the IPs that I've worked on, except for Meat Boy.
Okay.
Elias Ruel or something asks, what was your mindset when designing Delirium?
So the goal was to make something that thematically felt like the light at the end of the tunnel, like the when you die and people say they see the light. Like I want it to be like this. I wanted it to embody everything you've experienced. So I wanted it to like become the bosses that you fought and have like echoes of your run within it. And it be this just kind of like mess of chaos, which it kind of is. It can definitely be improved, and I know we're going to Repentance, but that's what I was going for thematically. Mechanically, it's probably a little more chaotic than it needs to be.
Yeah. And also, with a lot of your games, like with Isaac, you have an item that's called data mine, and that's a reference to the game being data mine.
Yeah.
How do you actually feel about your games being exposed like that?
I don't really care. I mean, it bothered me initially because I was trying to cool that people were gonna all have to team up in order to solve, and then it was already data mined, and then the people who data mined it just leaked it as people were kind of figuring it out, which sucked. But it wasn't that big of a deal. It was more of a learning experience to doing AOGs, and I think I've corrected in the two that I've done after that, like especially the Isaac one. I just realized, like, oh, I just can't put any files up. I can't put any files up. Like, and then what I can do is, that's the cool thing with Steam, is you can put up new builds whenever you feel like it. So I could breadcrumb updates and let people, it wouldn't be worth data mining a game to just find one little thing that people could already find within an hour or two of playing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm sitting now. When it comes to ARGs, I do stuff in the real world as much as possible, and I try not to touch files because I know that they can just be cheated. It's not a big deal, though. I know people like doing that, so I can't really fault them for doing it. And it was more my fault than theirs because I wasn't thinking, and I didn't think that, oh yeah, people could do it. And I even asked a few different programmers, like, how long will it take to break this apart? And they're like, oh, it'll take days and days. And it's like, no, it didn't take that long.
Well, I think we're well over an hour now, but let's. Do you have any final comments that you'd like to say before we wrap this up?
I mean, I know. Bumbo should be coming out soon enough. I'm working on a real trailer. Like I'm going to try to make some cardboard cutouts to make some live action sort of stuff going. Hopefully it works out. And yeah, James and I are working on it. James more than me. He's working hard on finishing it, and everything's kind of there for him, and he's just putting it all together. And hopefully within the next month or two, we'll have a really solid release date and announce where it's coming out, or all the platforms it's coming out on, hopefully. And and then after that, I'm just going to be Genex and finishing up Repentance, which should be out by the end of the year. And there's a Four Souls expansion coming out in May, which I finished a few months back, which should be pretty cool. And I may do another one, maybe around Repentance time. I think it might be cool to do some Repentance-y themed things for it. Might be a little one, I don't know. We'll see. And that's it. That's it for me. I'm on Twitter. But you probably, if anybody's listening, they probably already know that.
Links down below.
Yeah. Follow and subscribe. Hit that like button and the bell.
Smash that bell.
Yeah. All that stuff.
Give us a 5.
But yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you again for this discussion. It's been wonderful.
No problem.
I'd like to thank everyone in chat who joined and watched today. Of course, as we just mockingly said, links down below. We also have a link to our Discord, Patreon. Please think about supporting us. Really helps us a lot. Links to all of our Twitters down below, and shout out to the Duke of Dorks for being the super patron, as he always is, for the last 20 and a half years. Yeah. Pretty good.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thanks for joining us, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the day. So, goodbye.
Bye.